All right, hello again. We are here for reflection number 3, chapters 4 and 5 in our book here. Once again, a lot of information in both of the chapters, a lot of good information. But I picked out some questions, 3 or 4 or 5 questions, and that's what I'll highlight today that I found interesting and important and what I would like to bring some light to. So the first one is exercise 1 on page 92 and 93. And that exercise is about Parson. And Parson's case is a nonverbal student who uses pictures or a picture based communication system to talk. Um, he has some trauma and some anxiety issues from a while back. And some stuff that happened. But the big things that I wrote down about this were that the communication and information between all sources was clearly not happening. He clearly had some seizure stuff going on, some epilepsy stuff from way before that was on paper, but for some reason it wasn't into the right hands. People weren't talking, people weren't sharing the information. So unfortunately, Parson went a long time undiagnosed for the epilepsy that he was diagnosed previously for. So it's just, I don't want to say they failed him or them, but they could have done a lot more were they prepared and in communication and were sharing all like the files necessary. I definitely think the diagnosis, um, yeah, were they to have the IHP, because the question says, how would the use of an IHP and improved record keeping have helped the diagnosis? And I was in, or helped the diagnosis of Parsons' medical conditions. Well, once again, it could have been diagnosed way earlier, could have had way more success had it been diagnosed, and then, they wouldn't have been clueless about what was going on and been able to address Parsons' actual issues. So once again, that's just about the IHP and everyone being in understanding and good communication of a student's health plan. And yeah. And I was going to jump to another exercise, but this is perfect because one of my questions that I was going to go into is describe the purpose of an IHP. So, an IHP is an individualized health plan, basically, and it is a yearly updated plan for students with disabilities who also have medical conditions. And it's part of an IEP. I have to re-look at my words real. It's part of an IEP. It's reviewed by the nurse and by the team, and it's there to help avoid errors in the care of the student. Clearly, there's a lot of health stuff, or can be, going on with a lot of these students with disabilities, and for us to be on top of that at school and in communication with the parents and the nurse. I currently have been working in like a setting 3 or 4 with all nonverbal students, tube fed, all of that stuff for the last couple years. And it's super imperative that we are on the same page as the nurse and the parents about what happened the night before. Were there a bunch of seizures? Did they have a grand mal? How are they going to be today? Because for these kids who can't speak or can't talk or can't communicate as well, we really need to give them what they need to communicate, and we also just need to keep a close watch on them, especially when they have these health issues, so that we can make sure they're safe, and that everyone feels comfortable and everyone is getting the best care as possible. So that's what an IHP should be. Clearly, Parson in that case report did not, was kind of failed with his IHP because the team wasn't communicating well enough. So, those are 2 questions. On to exercise 2, which is on page 98 and 99. This is about Miss Smith. Miss Smith, this is an interesting one. So the question is, how did teacher bias or assumption interfere with the education and medical care of this student? So this student, once again, had an accident happen. I believe I'm trying to remember exactly what happened. She doesn't have memory of one of the years. It's not an accident, bipolar. But the biggest thing is she had a drop in grades and was falling asleep in class and stuff. And the immediate assumption of the teacher, because they know that this student is a good student or was previously, is to kind of go on the attack and be like, well, why are you sleeping in class, and making her stand in the back of class. So yeah, I wrote, making stand in the back of the class is absurd. Absolutely absurd to think that a student is tired and that you are going to make them stand in the back of class to stay awake. You have no idea, and clearly haven't dug into the deeper problem or the deeper issue with the student. You just don't want them falling asleep in your class, so you are trying to solve the problem with something that, with a remedy that's not going to work. So I think that's an absurd option. I wrote, ask parents or even ask the student. If you need to document data of the student behavior, if they're falling asleep every day, mark when they fall asleep, mark when they wake up, or that you had to wake them up, or that it took 2 times. Make some data of this so that you have an idea. Oh, they're falling asleep at 1 o'clock every day. Well, maybe you do some research and you find out that this student's actually up at 4 a.m. every day. So by the time 1 o'clock hits, they're dead tired. So just either documenting the data, talking to the parents and say, I'm noticing something off, or if that's not something that can be done, talking to the student. There's just so many other options rather than making a student stand in the back and kind of putting a spotlight on them when clearly there's a larger, bigger issue that they're struggling with. So, yeah, clearly the assumption, I don't know about the bias, but the assumption of the teacher was that she knew what was best and that she needed to stand in the back. So that's severely interfered with the education and the medical care of that student. So that is exercise 2. And the last one, I don't even know where this question was. It's in the assessment, the next chapter, but I just wanted to describe 3 behavior assessments real quick because they talk a lot about different assessments in here, but specifically I deal with a lot of students with behavior, so I chose to focus on behavior. So the first one I wrote for behavior assessment is just a direct observation. It's great for students with social difficulty. I have a lot of those with recess or gym class or things like that where they can get rowdy or don't have the social skills lunchroom, to just observe them. Don't step in, don't do anything unless, of course, there's a bigger issue, but just observe. This is all done in their natural environments, and this can just determine supports. It can help with job placement for transitioning stuff, for understanding what type of social interactions work for students and don't work for students. So direct observation is a simple one, but I think one that is very, very effective. So these are all on page 114 and 115, by the way. 115, direct observations. If you go back to 114, there's 2 different ones I'll go over. There's the behavior checklist, which is guide and develop and delineate behavioral needs that may impair students' ability to function in a job, home, or community setting. Multiple areas can be assessed. You can assess, social interaction skills, mental health, all sorts of things like that. And then deficits in these areas are often addressed through goal setting. And so having a behavior checklist like this can really help you determine goals, and then reaching those goals can be really helpful and successful for these transition students to watch themselves achieve these goals that they've clearly set for themselves, or that we've had helped them set for themselves. And then another informal assessment or informal behavior assessment is the adaptive behavior living skills, or adaptive daily living skills. And these just assess students like their independence, basically, or their amount of assistance that they might need. And so you can obviously observe data and do task analysis to determine progress in these areas, but we want to get them as independent as possible and have those kind of living skills and be ready for post-school life, and not just academics, because as we know, when we turn 18 and stuff, academics are great, but there's a lot more that comes with life. Living on your own, transportation, feeding, things like that. So really just assessing them in that and seeing where deficiencies might be, and then being able to remedy those. So yeah, that's all I have here. Clearly, there's a lot of assessment tools in here, a lot of different types of assessments when it comes to behavior or curriculum-based measurement, or whether we're doing career interest assessments, or we're just trying to understand what assessments are about. There's obviously a lot of them, and just making sure you use the right one is key for what you're actually trying to determine for the student, because using the wrong assessment could be detrimental to the student. So we need to be careful and do the best we can to support them by using the right assessments. So that's what I got for chapters 4 and 5. Thanks.